Hitting the pause button on this testimony so we can bring in national trial attorney Michael Jaafar. Michael, thank you for being on with us. They just mentioned Jeffrey Hayes. Let's talk about Mr. Hayes because he's not on the stand. We're seeing him potentially being involved in the aftermath of this stabbing, according to the prosecution. Where is he? Why isn't he on the stand, in your opinion?
He might have just telegraphed to them that he doesn't plan on testifying or probably taking the fifth, because at the end of the day, I feel like his hands are almost just as dirty as the defendant, if in fact she did this. So anytime that you have a person who could potentially be a co-conspirator or an accessory after the fact, it's very, very difficult to bring them in to testify. Even if another option might be that he telegraphed to them that his testimony would not corroborate their version of the story, or it might corroborate her version of the story. He's a wild card, and the prosecution probably feels they have enough to convict, and they don't want to bring in a wild card and make a mess of the whole trial.
Yeah, but he's certainly a big part of this story. He's one of the characters. They mentioned him in opening statements. They said he, along with Pfeffer, who took the stand, John Pfeffer, they were the protectors of this defendant. They both had a romantic interest in her. So in the aftermath, they did what she said. Why do you think we're here, Michael? Why didn't this get pleaded out? I mean, this is a pretty bad look for the defense overall, but there are these issues that the prosecution has. Doesn't that usually mean a case could be ripe for a pleading out to a lesser charge?
1,000%. People have to understand that over 98.7% of criminal cases get pleaded out, right? When I was a public defender, I was thrown a good 20 cases a week. I think we do 2 trials a month. The overwhelming majority of these cases get pleaded out, especially when you come to this level. So I am very shocked it didn't get pleaded out. I know that there's some mental health issues among the defendant and other potential co-conspirators. That might be the reason why. There's many times I had a hard time getting a plea through because my client just had an irrational belief on what their rights were and what the evidence showed. That's where my mind goes because of my experience with defendants.
Absolutely. It's great insight. We appreciate it. We're going to get to our break. All right. There's not any audio on the surveillance video, but continuing to show this jury her movements. This is the next day. It's daylight now. We saw some overnight after the stabbing happened. I want to bring back in national trial attorney Michael Jaafar. Michael, we talked about how right this case could have been for a deal if both parties could have agreed. Let's talk about it from the defense standpoint, though. They are focused on her leaving because she's on probation, that she couldn't stay even if she didn't have anything to do with it. Is that the best approach, do you think, for this defense? Or Jamie White, our analyst from the last hour, said that they should be focused on lessers. Would that mean they need to acknowledge she stabbed, but perhaps claim self-defense or accident?
I don't know if I agree with the prior panelists, because when you do that, juries are going to turn it off, and you're going to get convicted for the full entire thing. Defense attorneys know that juries do not buy those types of arguments. You basically might as well just plead guilty to the full entire thing. However, with that being said, what the defense is trying to do right now is trying to create any reasonable doubt. Look, one of the trials I lost when I was a young attorney was because my client was on video robbing a place, right? I had a deal for my client to not go to jail, but my client was insisting on going forward with the trial because, according to him, his defense was he's not a professional thief. He also insisted on taking the trial. We obviously lost that trial. My point in saying that is attorneys are not in charge of these cases. Defendants are. Defendants make the decisions on not only the litigation path, but the defense path, taking pleas, whether or not they testify. Many defendants will take their attorney's advice, but some defendants will insist on micromanaging the decision. So we don't know why she didn't take a plea. I agree with you. She should have taken a plea. This was ripe for a plea. But we don't know what's going on behind the scenes. But I would guess to say that this defendant is guiding the decisions and the litigation path.
And that happens very often. We don't see it. It doesn't come out in the courtroom. But we also don't know if the prosecution even offered a deal in this case. I actually want to go back to a moment that came up in court, and it's something I think our viewers just need to hear again. This is a conversation that she had with police after the stabbing. So it's before all of this that we are seeing of her kind of calmly going in and out of this apartment complex where Jeffrey Hayes lived. And the police are there at the crime scene, and they're saying, hey, you were one of the last people to see him. Can you come back here? Take a listen.
You mentioned he was acting crazy. What was he doing? When he ex-manic, he like assumes I'm cheating on him, and everything I say is a lie, and everything in his reality becomes kind of like a delusion.
Okay.
He's on medication for it, but then they didn't send him to him in the mail right away, so he didn't have him in his system for over 24 hours.
Michael Jaafar, she's calm. She said later in that she was shocked that he had collapsed. She wanted to know if she should go to the hospital. They say just come back to the crime scene. She never did.
It doesn't bode well for her. It does not bode well for her at all. Look, maybe there's two universes: the universe where she did it and she's lying about it, or the universe where she didn't do it and she's telling the truth. We don't know which universe we live in. We want the jury to decide that, but that piece of evidence you just played does not bode well for her, because if in fact she's telling the truth, she would have easily come back to the crime scene out of concern, out of helping. At the end of the day, the jurors will debate that, and this will be the first. I think this will be in the first 2 minutes of deliberation when they get the case. At the end of this case, they'll say, "Why didn't she come back to the crime scene?" Whether or not they'll convict her because of that, I don't know, but that is not a fact that bodes well for her at all.
Sure. We are going to see how the state ends this case, because they are getting close to the moment where they arrest her. Right now, she is still in the wind, according to police. According to the defense, she's just hanging out and is fine. Let's get to our break. When we come back, more of that surveillance video. All right, they're taking their lunch break there. In real time, they have returned from that lunch break, but the judge has imposed a 30-minute delay on us airing anything. So we will, in the next hour, be able to show you live coverage inside of that courtroom. Let's bring back in National Trial Attorney, big case Mike Jaafar. Mike, let's talk about really what's at the heart of this case. Outside of everything we're seeing with the surveillance video and what she may or may not have said, the statements from witnesses, this is about whether this was a homicide or a suicide. And we don't have a medical examiner saying definitively one way or the other. Have you noticed any other cases where the suicide argument has worked? I'm thinking about, if you remember, Colin Griffith, when he's a young man who had the incident with his mother, and he claimed she was suicidal, stabbed herself, and he called police. And ultimately, it was sort of a mix of a self-defense or suicide situation, but he was acquitted.
Yeah, and that one shocked me when you listen. So here's my theory on this. Anytime that the allegation of suicide involves somebody stabbing themselves, I don't know if juries buy it. They've clearly bought it before. You gave an example of a case where they did buy it. That case was particularly bizarre because of the prior incidents and all the other stuff. But when people kill themselves with mental health issues, which happens every day, the incidence of suicide is massive in the modern day era, right? When they do it, they usually do it with a gun. They do it by hanging themselves. They do it by jumping off of a tall building. I'm sad saying any of this stuff, but this happens all the time. Stabbing themselves is very, very, very remote. It's a very sadistic way to murder yourself, and juries don't usually buy it. Everybody has held a knife before. Everybody has poked their finger before, and they know how painful it is. So for you as a juror to get yourself mentally to the point where you agree and believe that somebody killed themselves by stabbing themselves intentionally, it's very difficult. The evidence has to be very overwhelming in your favor. In this case, it's like a 50-50. It's like a coin flip to me. So I don't know. I don't know if they're going to get there. Trial's not over yet, but we'll see what happens.
You're so right to mention that these are gruesome topics that we're discussing. We always want to mention 988 is a number that people should call if they are dealing with any of these kind of thoughts or desires to harm themselves. How important is it to make sure a jury understands mental health, understands drug abuse for both sides in this case?
It's very important. I mean, that pervades this particular case because there's a history for the defendant, right? It pervades this entire case. But if I'm the defense attorney, when they take the case, that is going to be my case in chief, is his history of mental illness and what mental illness does to you, even if they can bring an expert on who could testify that they have seen people stab them. I hope the defense attorney does that. I hope they condition the jury to know that this does happen and has happened, and it happened in this case.
And mental illness allegedly is on her side as well. We'll see how that plays out in the defense case. Michael Jaafar, thank you for your analysis. More of the kiss and kill murder trial, and we may see her arrest on surveillance video very soon. Stay with us.